is up, Kryptonians, and welcome to my Season 2 review for Superman and Lois. I do apologize, this review was supposed to be out a few days ago, but I had some camera issues, mostly with a memory card that got damaged. Part of my Superman and Lois series, you guys know that I'm reviewing all the seasons leading up to the finale of Season 4, which unfortunately is when we have to say goodbye to Superman and Lois. So I am going to be talking about Season 2 in depth. That is a spoiler warning. If you have not seen Season 2 of Superman and Lois, please feel free to exit out of this video and go check out Superman and Lois because you are missing out on some peak Superman stuff. Peak. Beyond that, please like the video, share the video, or subscribe to the channel. It really does help grow our family of Kryptonians here. We are really building something. All right, now, House of L. Let's settle in. Let's talk about Season 2, which is really, really good. I don't know if it's quite as good as Season 1, but it's still pretty good. I started out the other video, I think, bitching about Superman's suit. I don't like that suit that much. I will say the suit is a little bit better in Season 2, but it's also mostly the same suit. They change little things. There's little tweaks and stuff that they add. The colors are definitely brighter. It feels like the emblem is a little bit more pronounced on the suit, so that's a pretty good thing. Unfortunately, we have to wait until Season 3 to get the real upgrade for the suit, but I'm not gonna spend a lot of time bitching about the suit. The suit is fine. I wish it could be better. What I like about Season 2 is that they take a lot of the things from Season 1, right? The conflict with Kal and Tal-Rho, Jordan and John and their dynamic as twins, with Jordan getting powers, the Lang family, which, you know, God bless them, but they were definitely one of the weaker parts of Season 1. I didn't even really mention that in my other video, except in passing, but yeah, they could have been done better. Essentially, they take all of that good stuff from Season 1 and they double down on it. What I love about Season 2 is that they deepen and further the character arcs, or they take them to their natural progression, do it in a way that feels like it honors all the parties involved. Like, all the writing continues to be on point for this show. What we have here is a show that starts out with a conflict about Bizarro. Like, Bizarro comes to this Earth from this other parallel universe called the Inverse World or something. What I love about Bizarro is that he's Bizarro, obviously, and he just looks like Tyler, except a more fucked up version, and everything's backwards. Obviously, he's got heat breath, and he's got, like, ice vision and stuff. Like, all of that is pretty cool. But I love the containment suit that he comes in. Obviously, it's gonna remind everybody of the containment suit that Doomsday has. This is definitely a heavy bit of foreshadowing for where we're going in the future seasons of Superman and Lois. That's all I'm gonna say about that. One thing I like about the show is they establish that Superman kind of holds back the first time he fights people, but he gets better and he gets smarter every single fight. So by the time the second or third time you're fighting Superman, he's gonna clean your clock. He's gonna wipe you out and he's gonna get the job done. And I like the fights and the way that they were portrayed in this show. That third fight with Bizarro was awesome, man. I like Superman finally realizing, oh, you're just an opposite version of me. They were throwing down, hands were like, they were flying. The visual effects, the fight scenes on the show continue to be a standout. Having said that, the show is not really about the Bizarro conflict necessarily. It's really more about the Inverse World and really about Ali Alston, who is playing a version of Parasite in the show. I will get to Ali Alston in a minute and why I don't really care for her as a villain. What I do want to talk about is these character arcs. So Jordan and John, obviously, they have a really interesting dynamic because they're twins, they're brothers, they're like best friends, they love each other, but there was always an imbalance in their lives. Like, Jordan was always the one that had the mental issues, right? He had the anxiety that he was dealing with. John was always the one that was the popular one. He was always the put together kid. He had the athletic abilities and the talent. Like, he was always handed stuff that Jordan had to kind of fight for. Now, Jordan is not really the outcast anymore. He got powers in Season 1, and for the first time in their lives, there's an imbalance. Jordan has something that John does not have. I really like the way the writing plays out for their characters over this season and in Season 3, and I can't really get into the spoiler stuff for Season 3. John, I like the way his insecurities created like this big thing in this season where he's actually using XK, which is X-Kryptonite, to get powers to make himself better at football, but really just to make himself feel better in a family of superpowers and superheroes. Listen, Candace is a nice girl. I'm sure John loves her, and I know when you're a teenager, you do irrational shit all the time, but holy shit, she would have had to have been Zendaya or Lupita or Kelly or Beyonce or Megan or somebody like that in order for me to risk my livelihood, my life, risk getting expelled from school, to risk going to jail. Like, yeah, God bless Candace. It's nothing personal against her. I don't think she was putting it down good enough to make it worth all of that. I'm just saying. It's just me personally. Like, I was looking at John like he was crazy in the season. But that's what teenagers do. Teenagers make mistakes. Teenagers are flawed. We're all flawed, really, but especially more so as teenagers because we're still figuring shit out. Jordan's whole entire arc in the season is really more about him becoming more comfortable with his powers, becoming more powerful in general. I like the training sessions that he works on with Sam Lane, who is not the General Lane anymore. He's retired after season 1. But really, this season is more about the shifting dynamics of his relationship with Sarah. Well, in this season, Sarah comes to him and she's like, hey, I kissed somebody else, but I still want to make it work. And Jordan's mad about that for an episode or something. But then one of the finer points of the season emerges, and it's about Superman and the impact that keeping his secret has, not just on him and his family, but on the people around them, the relationships that they have with the people they care about. Because there's a wedge that gets driven between Jordan and Sarah because he can't be honest with her. He can't tell her about his powers and about why he's not as committed to her, because he has to be committed to being a superhero too. Sarah understandably gets frustrated at this because she doesn't know the truth, and she eventually decides, okay, we need to break up. I will say this does lead to some pretty unnecessary and stupid drama. Because it is the CW, you're gonna get some of that. Like Superman revealing his secret to Lana because they had no choice, basically. The inverse version of John came to this earth. He did some stuff to Lana that basically made it almost impossible for them to not tell her that Clark was Superman. Clark telling Lana that he was Superman, like, that was an appropriately emotional scene. I'm glad we got to see the aftermath and her reaction to everything. But then we had like an episode of her being mad at Lois because she's like, well, you should have told me, we were friends or something. And I'm just like, what?
What the fuck are you talking about, man?
I do understand her kind of looking at her sideways like, hey, maybe our relationship wasn't actually real or something, but it's like, how can you get mad at me for not telling you my husband is Superman? Like, that's not my secret to tell. So she gets mad at Lois for an episode, and then we get this really silly thing involving Clark's identity, which again, I understand a secret identity. I get the point of it. I get why it's important, but they just made it way too complicated because of the CW and their need for drama. Essentially, Lana is like, well, I was gonna tell my daughter, but I don't want to tell her because I don't want her to feel like she's lying to her dad and her sister. And then for like an episode or maybe 2 episodes or whatever, she's like, well, because of this, I can't hang out around the Kents, and I don't want any of us to be around the Kents because when I'm around them, I feel like I'm lying to the rest of my family or whatever. And I'm just like, it's not that complicated, Lana. I was driving myself crazy. I was like, this is stupid, okay? Just tell your daughter and tell the father. Tell them at least. Like, you guys are closer to the Kents than anybody in Smallville. They're basically family at this point. Their son is dating your daughter. Like, just tell them. It makes all of this easier. Instead, we have to like go through this thing where it's like, we can't fuck with the Kents for a couple episodes. I'm like, this is stupid. I don't know. I was just driving myself crazy with a lot of that. But again, that's the CW for you. I complained about the Langs in season 1, mostly because it just felt like they didn't have much to do. The show was trying to make me care about their personal family stuff while there's like bigger shit going on. Like, I love the show, but I mean, if Tal-Rho is threatening the rest of the world with an Eradicator thing, how am I expected to care about Lana and her family being given the side eye by Smallville? Like, I don't give a shit about that, dude. Speaking of Tal-Rho, I am glad that they brought him back for season 2 because the dynamic between him and Clark is one of my favorite things about season 2. One of the things I love about Superman and Batman, for example, is like the dynamic between them where it's like Superman's the hopeful, bouncy, lighthearted, optimistic one. And we know Batman is like the surly, brooding, like darker, more serious version. And I like the way that they can bounce off of each other that way. That exists for the show, kind of, except in a twisted way. It's like Superman is more Batman-like when he's around Tal-Rho. Tal-Rho is like the bouncy, like jokey guy that's kind of constantly trying to push Clark's buttons, constantly trying to get under his skin. It's kind of hilarious, and it's a great dynamic, and I liked seeing their relationship evolve over the season. Still enemies at first, like Tal-Rho trying to kill Jordan, and that was actually kind of cool to see Jordan try to stand up to his uncle like that. And later on in the season, when they're kind of stuck in the prison together and they have to kind of work together to get out of it. And then by the end, to see the trust and the love that they've developed for each other. Like, Tal-Rho hates humans and hates humanity, but the fact that he's willing to give them a shot and to help them and to help his brother after everything that happened in season 1, like, I love the evolution of that, and I like their dynamic, and that was one of the best things about season 2. Another thing that I appreciated for the season was their emphasis on Superman being the man of tomorrow. Superman throughout his history has always been like, you know, stood for truth, justice, and the American way, and I like the fact that as we've evolved into a modern era, Superman is allowed to evolve too. But the conflict between him and Anderson is specifically because Anderson wants Superman to stand for America. He wants him to put America first, and Superman's like, no, I put the world first, sir. That is what I do. I'm not just about America. I love that because that represents the evolution of the character and the way he should be. He is Superman, and he stands for truth, justice, and a better tomorrow, and that's what he should be, and I love the fact that this show emphasized that. I will get into some of my negatives here for the season a little bit heavier. Ali Alston, she's basically playing a different version of Parasite. I kind of liked her when she was just this cult leader and she represented this thing that Lois and Chrissy, it's something that they have to deal with in this show where it's not like Superman can like punch his way out of it, and I like that dynamic. But then when she like evolves into this other being where she's like trying to merge two worlds and then she essentially becomes an all-powerful version of Parasite, yeah, I didn't really care for her. Maybe it's because it's juxtaposed with season 1 where Tal-Rho was such a personal villain for Clark, and here she's just some chick that like, I don't know, she's like trying to merge a world and become all-powerful, and that's really it. It's just not as interesting for me. In the comics, she was a version of Parasite, and I'm sorry, they don't really do anything with that to make it more interesting. I will say it does lead us to sun-dipped Superman after Clark lost his powers, and then it leads to one of the all-time great moments, and I say that a lot watching this show, one of the all-time great Superman moments where Superman essentially does his Earthbreaker punch. He like shatters the dimensions between two universes to push the inverse world and Earth apart. Like, that shit was awesome, man. I could watch that. I've watched that scene so many times. It's also probably the closest thing we're gonna get to sun-dipped Superman Prime 1 million. Like, it's probably the closest we're gonna get to that in live action. But either way, I also feel like the inverse Earth, while it was a cool idea and concept, I feel like they kind of wasted it. They only really used it to like deepen this conflict between John and Clark, because John and Clark are beefing because John was selling XK drugs, right? And then tried to lie about it. So that created a little bit of beef, and they don't really do anything other than show like this is what happened in the other Earth and this is what could be. The inverse Earth could serve as like a cautionary tale where it's like this is what happens when the secret is out, when we get too full of ourselves. But otherwise they don't really do anything with the concept worth exploring. It's kind of hilarious because the Lois from the inverse world is brought to the main world at the end of the show. She literally does nothing but just stand there and stare at people, and I'm just like, why would you bring her here if you're not going to have her interact with the other characters? I don't know, it just feels like a lot of wasted potential here that didn't really go anywhere. Like I said, the CW drama is always gonna be a part of it, and sometimes you just roll your eyes, you gotta go with it. Natalie and the way that her relationship with the Kents evolves throughout the season. Like at first, she and her dad are away from Smallville. They're trying to create distance between themselves and the Kents. Then all of a sudden, she and her dad come to live with the Kents. Then that becomes too much, and she blames like Clark for why her father got hurt. So then all of a sudden, he helps them get their own place. It goes everywhere in every which direction. I'm glad that it turned out the way that it did though. In the end, the visuals are better, the suit is a little bit better, the action is better, but more importantly, the character arcs are more realistic, more fully realized. Jordan and John and their continuing dynamic, I love that. In the end, season 2 is a really, really good season. Not quite as good as season 1, but still pretty damn good. Season 2 of Superman and Lois was a pretty awesome time. Great Superman content. I'm gonna give this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Guys, those are my thoughts on season 2 of Superman and Lois. Tell me, what did you think about it? What were some of your favorite moments of the season? Go ahead and put that in the comment section down below. Please like and subscribe to the Superfan Show, and if you like what you see, tell me how you feel, and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.